Hey guys, so one big thing I've been thinking about recently is with the announcement of Nintendo Switch 2 and obviously its confirmation of a launch date on June 5th, is it worth buying an original Switch in 2025? Now, many people will have this discussion that a lot of the games are backwards compatible, and that is a case that you can make. So your digital library, for example, would already transfer over, and that would be quite a good reason to not buy a Switch and just wait for the Switch 2. However, there are some also games that you'd have to consider that wouldn't be able to be played on Switch 2. Stuff like Ring Fit Adventure, stuff like I believe Nintendo Switch Sports isn't playable due to like the motion control thing. I could be wrong on that regard. I know games like 1-2 Switch won't be available to play either, nor would the Nintendo Labo titles. Now, is that really a big loss of games? Like I know Ring Fit Adventure is huge. People love Ring Fit Adventure, but the other games that you won't really be able to play, I don't really see them as a big loss not having them available on Switch 2 at launch. And I'm sure Nintendo will do something to like make a version of these games available, at least for something like Ring Fit Adventure 2 and Switch Sports. If Switch Sports is not playable, I'm not entirely sure in that regard. But also the upgrade packs as well for certain games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. That to me makes it very clear that these games are designed to be future-proof, and I reckon these upgrade versions will have better graphics and maybe better controls. Now, whether or not you want to pay the price that Nintendo is asking for these games is another thing, because you can get them cheaper if you get them on Switch 1, and that's something we've got to factor in. A lot of these games that are getting upgrade packs on Switch 2 are cheaper on Switch 1, and they play the same thing. Another thing we also have to factor in is actually the price of the consoles. Now, a new Switch currently is like 300 British pounds, and I'm doing this in British currency because that's my local currency. To compare that to the Switch 2, my pre-order cost me nearly £400 just for the console. I didn't get a game with it, and the Mario Kart Tour bundle with Switch 2 is obviously £430. So if you want to get a Switch for cheaper and basically play a lot of the same games, you might as well just get a Switch 1. And if you don't want to play the latest Donkey Kong and latest Mario Kart at launch, but you still want like a Nintendo system and Nintendo games to play portably, I feel like getting a Switch original Switch or Switch Lite could be a value proposition for you. I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't spend your money on, but if you're not interested in the newest Nintendo games and you still want to just basically get a Switch and play a couple games, maybe play a few Zeldas, play a few Marios, whatever, then I feel like the Switch 1 and the Switch Lite, they will probably serve you quite well. If you want to splash the cash to obviously get a Switch 2, that's your choice. And also you got to remember that the prices of the games on Switch 2 are a little bit more expensive than the Switch. So that's something you need to factor in as well. Especially with obviously there being quite a big aftermarket for physical games for Switch 1 as well. Because obviously if you can get games secondhand quite quickly and quite cheaply compared to Switch 2, because Switch is not even out yet. And it also depends on how desperate you are for these games and how desperate you are to obviously have it in your possession, because Switch 2 is 2 months away. At the time of making this video, at the time of releasing this video, Switch 1 is already available, and so is Switch Lite. And I know a lot of the software will be backwards compatible as well, so if you buy a Switch 1 now, and maybe in a few years you upgrade to a Switch 2, you will have a catalogue that will transfer over with you. But you also need to, just look at it from an economic standpoint. Is it worth it for you to buy a Switch 1 in 2025? There are some games coming out for Switch 1 in 2025. Still, I know Tony Hawk's Pro Skate 3+4 is coming this year. I know as well next year, the new Tomodachi Life has been confirmed for Switch 1. So, it's not like there's not enough games on Switch 1, but also, to me, it feels like you need to make the decision yourself whether you want to play the newest Nintendo games at launch, or if you're more interested in playing some of the more more recent stuff, but also not the newest stuff, if that makes sense. Now, obviously, I'm not a financial advisor. If you want to spend your money buying a Switch 2, go ahead, do it. I'm not going to stop you. But also, if you want to just play stuff like Mario Odyssey and that, and you finally have the money together to buy a Switch, and you just don't want to wait for the Switch 2, and you're not interested in the newest games and all whatnot, then you just buy a Switch 1 or Switch Lite. It's entirely up to you guys. Do I think a Switch 1 is worth buying in 2025? It really depends on your financial standpoint and whether or not you want to buy a Switch 2 or not. But I feel like if you want to buy a Switch 2, you probably already have a Switch. So I'm not sure why you'd want to buy another Switch in 2025 when you could just get the Switch 2. I don't know. This video is my opinion, guys. Don't execute me in the comments. You're a shill or whatever. Just let me know what you guys think. Do you think it's worth buying a Switch 1 in 2025? Do you think it's not? Let me know what you think. I've been EC. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and I'm signing out. Peace.